Jay Widener comes on, George Norrie, on occasions he'll come on, he talks about alchemy, and Jay is absolutely goddamn brilliant, incredible mind. And Jay and I have been friends for a long time, and I could tell you all kinds of stories about Jay and Richard Hoagland, but Richard was telling me one night, because he was a speaker up there too, we went out to dinner one night, and Richard was telling me that the moon was hollow, and that it was probably towed here. And on that, it just reminds me, have you ever heard of Dr. Norm Berglund? Dr. Norm Berglund is a physicist for NASA.
His book.
Huh?
I get his book.
Yeah,
The
Ringmakers of Saturn. Yeah. Well, Norm Berglund came up to me. I noticed him because he looked out of place. He's a little short man, very well dressed, a little bow tie and a little briefcase. He looked like a mad scientist. And he came up to me in San Francisco. I was speaking at a conference up there, and he came up and he said, "Jordan, I want to talk with you. I got something to show you." So I follow him over because he's already fascinating just to look at. And we sit down in the lobby. Yeah. I'm wondering, who is this guy? And he said, "My name is Norm Berglund." He gave me his business card. He said, "I've come here to talk to you." So as I'm through talking to you, I'm going home. I'm not interested in what's going on. I'm interested to tell you something. He said, "Here's my credentials," and he showed me his paperwork and his ID from NASA. He's one of the top physicists at NASA. And he says, "You talk a lot about Saturn. I'm going to tell you some things that we know about Saturn that nobody knows. Saturn is inhabited. We don't know who they are, but we know there's somebody there. We know that aliens have used Saturn as a base because that probe that went out there, he said, I have in my briefcase, and he showed me the pictures of spaceships of some kind going into Saturn. You can see a picture, boop, 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 and it goes into Saturn. And others, when it was going around, coming out of Saturn. So we know that there are ships coming into the planet and going out of the planet. And he said, so we know it's inhabited. We don't know who they are exactly. And he said, but we also know that the rings around Saturn are artificial. Somebody made them. And so that's what his book is about. His book is called Saturn, The Ringmakers of Saturn. And he shows pictures about one ring that's in the process of being made right now. And it's 9/10 done, but it comes almost, but it's not finished yet. And there's a ship, some sort of a spaceship, that's producing that ring. Little by little, it's producing the ring, and it's almost finished. And he said, and he showed me the spaceship, and he said, it's estimated, our scientists are estimating this ship is over 3,200 miles long, from Los Angeles to Connecticut. 3,200 miles wide. And he says, and that's how wide it is. And he said, but it's not the only ship. This is the one that's building a new ring. But there are others that go into Saturn and come out of Saturn. So we know it's inhabited. Now, when I put that together with the fact that on the North Pole of Saturn is a hexagram. Did you know that? The Star of David is on the North Pole of Saturn.
What's the significance of that?
Well, now it opens up a can of worms. Because now Saturn is inhabited. We know scientifically it is. On the North Pole of Saturn is the hexagram, or what we call the Star of David. A hexagram is a six-pointed star. And yet the Jewish God Yahweh, Jehovah Yahweh, is directly connected, even in the old scriptures, to the planet Saturn. And Saturn in the Phoenician language is today called Hebrew. Today when we say something in the Hebrew, it's not exactly Hebrew. The Hebrews speak it. The language itself is Phoenician, and the Hebrews speak the Phoenician language, so we call it Hebrew. Well, that's like saying in America we speak the American language. No, there is no American. That's English, but we speak it, we're called Americans. And so it's not American language, it's English. Well, the Hebrews speak it, but it's not Hebrew, it's Phoenician. Well, in the Phoenician language, the planet Saturn is spelled and said Shabbat. Shabbat is Saturn in the Phoenician language. And the worship of Shabbat is called Sabbath. And so the Sabbath is the worship of the God Yahweh, Jehovah, which is the planet Saturn. And so that's the holy Sabbath, Shabbath. And then you start getting into, wait a minute, then what is the rings around Saturn? What is that? And I asked him, well, what do you think the rings are? He said, we're not really sure. But what we're theorizing is the rings could be a dish, like our deep space dishes for telecommunication. It could be that those rings are connected to Saturn somehow as a dish for deep space communication. So as Saturn moves around, that dish radiates out and can pick up messages from deep space. So it's kind of like an antenna. They move it around. If it's inhabited and they're using those rings as a communication, who are they communicating with? And that's why the Vatican, when Dr. Roger Lear talked with Balducci, the Catholic priest who was talking about UFOs and aliens are here. He's in the Catholic Church and he's right there with the Pope. But he's saying the aliens are here. You better get ready for them because they're here. And he's talking about Saturn. Balducci was talking about Saturn, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, what does the church know here that they're not telling us? And well, oh, there are demons out there that come from the heavens. Well, where did the angels come from? A child will tell you, come from heaven. Well, where is God? Ask any 8-year-old. God's out there, he's in heaven. Well, of course, that's what it is, heaven. You look out and you'll see heaven. But I got to tell you, if God is in heaven and the angels are in heaven, heaven is extraterrestrial. I don't know if you know that or not. So if there are angels from out there who have come here, they're smarter than you. You haven't gone there, they've come here, so they're smarter than you. And they can do things you can't do. And they've come from heaven. Well, an 8-year-old will tell you that. Well, that means they're extraterrestrial, and they have come here. So you better go back and look at this. See, even the Apostle Paul said in the book of Corinthians, I think it was, the Apostle Paul wrote, always be hospitable to all men, for some have entertained angels unaware. Meaning, always when you're in the presence of anybody, be hospitable and courteous. Because some have entertained aliens who look like humans, but they're not human. They're just fooling you. And they look like human. Why? Because they're the ones that created you to start with. So you look like them. They don't look like you. And if that's the case, then my God, that opens up a can of worms. How many people among us in government and religion are not really humans that look like us? They are the Elohim in the Bible. Elohim said, we, come let us make. I talked with Dr. Rabbi Marvin Antelman, Rabbi Marvin Antelman, many years ago, during the 60s, from about 61 to 69, he and I were continually on the phone talking to each other. He was in Newton, Massachusetts. He's written many books, many famous books about the Jewish religion and about occultism, the Jewish history of occultism and mysticism, and he's very famous. I don't know if he's even alive now, but that was back in the 60s. But the things he used to tell me fascinated me, even back then. He said, nowhere in the Bible does it say God created man. It doesn't say that. He said, try and find any place in the New Testament or the Old Testament that says God created man. It doesn't say that. Go back and read it correctly. Read the sentence the way it was written. That's what the church says, that God created man. It doesn't say that in the Bible. It doesn't say that in any Hebrew text either. What it says, if you go back and read it, and he went through this with me and explained it to me, Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. But that's a mistranslation. The King James Translating Committee was great on the King's English, but on Hebrew and Greek they weren't that high. They made a few mistakes. So they did the best they could in translating it into the King's English. So when it says in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, that's not what it says in the Hebrew. It says in the Old Hebrew, in the beginning Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Elohim is a feminine plural on the end of the word God. God in the Phoenician language is El. El is in the Phoenician language, Hebrew language, God. But if you look up El in the dictionary of gods, it says El was Saturn. Saturn was called El. So if you take Isis from Egypt, Isis, the worship of Isis, and the worship of Amun-Ra, the sun, Amun-Ra, Re, and then the worship of Saturn, El, you got Israel, Isis, Ra, and El, the three names of the gods of the ancient East. So today we think it's all the Israel. No, it's Isis, Ra, and El, airhead. Open up your mind and find out where this stuff is coming from. And then when you understand that the moon god in Arabia, the Arab moon god was called Yahweh, or Allah, Yahweh, Allah, Yahweh, and Yahoo. Yahoo on computer, look up Yahoo, and in the religious dictionary it will tell you Yahoo is Yahweh, the Hebrew God, Yahoo. And but anyway, the Arabic moon god was named, his personal name was Sin, S-I-N. That was his name. Sin was the moon god. And in the old ancient Arabic language, a mountain was called Ai. Ai was a mountain. And so at night in Arabia, they would look east to where the sun, the moon was rising. And the moon rose in the mountain range. In Arabia, they have a very high mountain range in the middle. And so at night, you could see the moon come up from the mountain. The ancient Arabians called him, go to any dictionary, look up Old Man of the Mountain. Old Man of the Mountain was the moon god's named Sin, and he lived in the mountain. So at night, the Old Man of the Mountain would come up, and so the ancient Arabians and the Phoenicians, which we call the Hebrews, would worship the moon god. And his name was Sin. And a mountain is called Ai. You put the two together, it becomes Sinai. Sin, Ai, God of the mountain. So Moses goes up to Sinai. No, Sin, Ai, the mountain of the moon god. This is why in Genesis, the first chapter, it talks about when God created everything, he starts in the evening of the morning of the first day. This is why today, Jews still celebrate, the beginning of the day from 6 o'clock at sundown to 6 o'clock the next day at sundown. That's a day. They don't do it from 12 midnight. They do it from 6 in the evening to 6 in the evening. That's a day. Why? It's because from 6 in the evening is when the moon god comes out. Because they're not sun worshippers, they're not Christians. Christians worship the sun, but the Jews worship the moon. So they have what is called a lunar calendar. We have a solar calendar. So the Catholic Church gave to the Western civilization a calendar based on the sun, God's Son, our risen Savior, who walks across the sky in 12 steps. And so it's a 12-step program. Well, that's right. If the alcoholics have a 12-step program, you got a 12-step program when you go to school, starting the first grade and into the 12-step program. And the sun was referred to as Horus. Horus was the sun god, and he walked across the sky in 12 steps. And he was our risen Savior. Of course, the Horus was your risen Savior. That's why today the sun comes up on the Horus rising. Horus is risen. He's risen. He's our risen Savior. And he walks across the sky in 12 steps. So they would say Horus is the first step, Horus is the second step, Horus is the third step. So he walks across the sky in 12-step program. And what did he do for us? He brought light into the world. Light was Lucius in Latin. Lucius, the god of Lucius, light, walks across the sky. When you personify and make light into a person, it becomes Luke. Luke is Lucius in Latin. So you have Luke Skywalker, who walks across the sky and meets his evil brother, Darth Vader, the Prince of Darkness. It's just religion. It's just a story. Now listen to Dr. Lee tell you shit you are not going to believe. Stuff that he has actually seen.
Did you see that?
You think you've seen strange stuff? Go to Ecuador and see what they've got that you don't even know exists on the earth. But he was saying, and Klaus Donna is another guy you need to know about. Klaus, K-L-A-U-S, Donna, D-O-N-A. He's got a couple of videos on my website. Extraordinary man from Germany. He's into all this stuff too. But Dr. Leo was saying that But there's a doctor friend of his who lives in Ecuador who has a large museum there of all kinds of strange artifacts that he owns in that museum. So he said, so I went down to visit him, stayed with him for a couple of days, and he said, so he took me through all the museum, showed me all these fascinating, incredible statues of reptile aliens and all these things that they made hundreds of years ago. And he said, and so Dr. Lear said, instead, I told him, this is some of the most fascinating stuff I've ever seen. He said, no, I got the good stuff in the back. But I haven't drank first. And then I will show you the real stuff in the office.
Oh.
And he said, so we went in his back office, and he went over to his safe in the wall, and opens up the safe, and he pulls out a box. He said, it looks just like a cigar box, the size. And he said, I was sitting at his desk, and he brings the box over and sits it down, opens it up, and there were 2 dead crabs. Just 2 dead crabs. And he said, then he reached in and took the crabs out and laid them in front of me. He said, check that out. And he said, Dr. Lear said, I couldn't believe that where the eyes and the mouth of the crab would be was a human head looking up.
No.
With the jaws that could move. But it was a skeletal head. It had died. But both these crabs had skeletal heads where the eyes would be, a human head that was perfectly, the perfect size of a little tiny head looking up. And he said that the jaws would move so that it was half crab and half human. But the crab's head and the spine on the back of the head was connected to the crab shell. So it was one entity. It wasn't some small person put it in there. No, it's one entity because he said, the magnifying glass, I could see the shell is connected to the spinal that's holding the head.